we're going to be in the same boat, so to speak. Maybe not the same boat, but we're going to be in the same situation. Therefore, I want, my first appeal is to become CERT trained. I'm speaking to the choir, I'm looking at the crowd. How many CERT people do we have in the audience right now? Lots. The first priority for a CERT is to take care of himself, herself, and their family. The second priority, if they're available, is to help our community. And that's how MDP is basically structured. With our 8 disaster aid stations throughout the community, with our advanced treatment area that we were able to bring online last year, where Dick and his group will quote-unquote operate from. So we've got the infrastructure set up. We just need more volunteers. It's a commitment of about 30 hours, usually done over, how long is it, Chief? 30?
It's a weekend. Yeah.
It's a long weekend.
It's a long weekend. We start Friday night, Thursday night or Friday night. We wrap it up Sunday.
4 hours each of those 2 nights, Thursday and Friday, a full day on Saturday, and then a pretty in-depth training exercise on Sunday. And what you're taught can save a life. I'm going to bring it into perspective about the need for training. And if I get emotional, forgive me. You do not know the fear and the anguish and the helplessness you feel when you walk in your backyard and you find your 18-month-old son lifeless in the bottom of your backyard spot. It happened to my wife and I. You call 911, and you know it's going to take a while, and you're standing between life and death. I don't want anybody to go through that. The good thing is, thank God, 2 weeks before I took a CPR class. And even though I took the CPR class, you don't know if you're doing it right. You know, you're waiting for an immediate response. You can hear the ambulance coming. But at least you're trained. At least you're doing what you were taught to do. And in our circumstance, Chris started to breathe as the fire department came into the backyard. And they took him to the hospital, and because the water was cold, 2 days later they released him and he responded. All I'm getting at is, if we have an earthquake, if a bookcase falls on your grandchild, if a picture falls off the wall and hits one of your loved ones in the head, if somebody breaks an arm or a leg, and you are the only one there, you're going to be the only one there. Therefore, get trained. If it's not for the community, it's just for yourself. And I'd like Chief to reinforce the importance of our CERT volunteers to Idyllwild and what it means to our first responders.
I don't need the mic. Some people say to be a chief you have to have this kind of voice. That's not really true. I just happen to be fortunate. I'd like to ask for those who were CERT trained to raise their hand, or CERT on the CERT team, CERT members. I want to see the hands of the people who have taken the CERT training but are not affiliated. Anybody in this room who has taken the training but is not affiliated? Okay.
Affiliated with
CERT. So, because you can take the training and not be on a team. And the reason Mike and I are kind of hounding on this is that we have a lot of folks who've taken the training and are not responsive to the request when we put it out for either additional training or recontact or whatever the case may be, to make sure that we still have your current information and that we can still use you. There's a mentality that comes with living in rural areas, and that is that, you know what, I'll just be a walk-on volunteer. And that works to a point. But the problem is that we don't know you. We don't know what your training is. And we can't let you into what we're dealing with if you're a walk-on volunteer. Now, I can't lie to you. The reality of it is up here, everybody counts. But untrained folks are a problem for us. And one of the things that the CERT program teaches is chain of command, and not only your rescue techniques, but it teaches who's responsible for what. And who do I ask, who do I talk to, who do I take orders from, all of that, which is important for a clean, orderly response. And out of untrained volunteers comes chaos, poor communications, and it creates problems for us. And we don't want that for anybody. So I know not everybody's hands went up in this room. And it doesn't matter how old, how young, how infirmed, how healthy, able-bodied you are, you can still take the CERT training. You can still get something out of it. And you can help yourselves, you can help your family, you can help your neighbors. And I would really encourage you to be a part of that. But we can't take on walk-ons. And we can go clear back to the mountain fire. And the mountain fire, when the hard closure hit for the roads, it was the CERT volunteers that we went to ask for help when we reopened the community. Because not only did they know their neighbors, but they were carded. So we already knew who those people were, and were able to put them in strategic locations to help us get you back in the community, help your neighbors get back in the community. It was a very valuable service. And some of our CERT volunteers, to a lesser extent, have been called up to work in other parts of the county. And that's really where CERT comes in, is that, yes, we're going to have, the potential for the big event here, whether it's a weather event or the earthquake, the potential's here. And we're going to rise to the occasion. But if our neighbors, let's take the desert for example, we've had some flood events down there over the last couple of years. We've actually been called up and had a couple of CERT folks mobilized, in addition to the Red Cross as well, to help out with those events in various capacities. So it's the ability to mobilize and also work with other CERT volunteers in other areas, because they may not be able to volunteer in their area. They may not be able to serve because they're busy trying to save their own property while we are coming in to help them. And the same thing is in reverse for up here. It's just, we're in Shangri-La, folks. We've been very, very lucky. And don't take that for granted. It's all about preparation. And as much as we hate to say it, we train like we want to work. So it's train like you're going to play, and play like you've been trained. And if you're not trained, you're going to have a hard time playing. And we hope we never use our training, honestly. I want you all trained, and I hope you never have to use it. I hope you never have to use your CPR training. I hope you never have to use your first aid training. That's my wish. But we're human. Yes, ma'am.
When are you going to have more classes?
We try to put them on twice a year, but it depends on enrollment, quite honestly. So we do keep a running list. MDP keeps a running list of those who want. The county tries to do at least one training a year. We partner with them as well. So it just depends on what's convenient for schedules and whatnot. A couple other things while I'm up here, since I'm not trying to fill time, but I am filling time. Anybody in here thinks that with the cold snap last week, we're out of fire season? So, I still have an engine out in Corona. There's still a lot of county and CAL FIRE units out, so if you've seen some strange vehicles running around the hill with different numbers than you're used to, it's because those folks are assigned out there and on that fire. We did have a fire the same day that the canyon fire occurred in Corona. We had a fire at the base of the hill between San Jacinto and Saboba, and that fire was moving towards an uphill. They hit it hard, hit it fast, got it knocked down. I never did hear an acreage count. I did try to find a report on it online. I never did see one. So it must not have been over 10 acres, but certainly the potential's there. So just because it's cold, we are not out of fire season yet. Yes, Doc?
I'm sorry, I probably should know this, but you mentioned CERT team or teams, and I'm not sure if I'm registered or not. I did get activated to go out in the Garden Valley with that incident, but I've never heard anything from a CERT organization.
Well, if you're going to get, if CERT, the only way you get activated for CERT is through County Emergency Management Department or Idyllwild Fire here on the Hill. Those are the only two agencies that can activate CERT and call you up and ask you to put in. The problem is, Doc, well, it's not a problem, because it's not. You are a volunteer on so many levels. I'm not sure how you were called up or what you were called up for specifically. Because between the Red Cross and MDP and CERT and the medical team, you're on a lot of phone lists. So I'm not quite sure how you, who got activated for what on that incident. I only know that at the end of the incident, when we needed to reopen the gates, we had an incident management team meeting, and the question was asked, how are we going to do this? Who's going to staff? And so the Sheriff's Department didn't have enough folks, and we said, if you can give us a deputy, 1 or 2 deputies at every checkpoint, we will get you the volunteers. Phone calls went out, we made it happen. And that's really how it works, and it works very, very well. But we've got to have your current contact information, we've got to have your current, all of your contact, not only your contact information, but we've got to have your current certification and training levels. And of those of you who are CERT, you should have your official CERT ID cards. That is your card that you are going to be required to have in your paw or around your neck when you are called to service. Because if you show up and don't have that card, we can't use you. Sherry, you got a question?
MDP has everybody that is in the computer. They have their name, their number. Is that what you depend on for that information?
So that we don't maintain that list. You guys, MDP maintains the list. EMD maintains the list.
So will you depend on what we have?
Yes, we already do. So, ma'am?
I think that was my question. You said we need your name. I'm certified. I got certified down in India with video EOC. Who should I connect up with up here?
MDP.
Right?
MDP.
Right.
We've got some folks in the room that can get you and move you over to us. And if you're with Indio, you're already with the county.
I am.
So,
Idyllwild Fire, who Mark Lamont, Captain Lamont,
Chief
Lamont.
Battalion Chief Lamont.
I'll congratulate him when I see him. Has entrusted MVP to keep the file, basically. And what we've done is asked all of our CERT volunteers via an email whether they would permit us to share their contact information with a service that we now use called Call Fire. Not CAL FIRE, but Call Fire. It's an automated system where either Idyllwild Fire or county will notify us and activate CERT. From that activation, MVP generates the announcement that goes to your home phone and your cell phone. And message will be able to emit, and it will direct you to where to report what the incident is, and that's basically it. It might be just report Idyllwild fire, and you'll be assigned out from there. We've got the MDP has got the infrastructure. We need the volunteers. It's easy to say somebody else will take care of us. It's easy to say support is going to come up from down below, but we are so vulnerable here, especially to earthquake and having road closures, that face it, it's going to be us and our friends and our CERT team and Dr. Goldberg's medical group that are going to be able to do what those volunteers did in those other areas over the first 48 hours, possibly save lives. So that's why it's important, and that's why I've got my preacher jacket on, and that's why I'm begging.
Just a couple more things, folks, is that we always prepare for disasters for the very best of circumstances. And the reality is it can hit anytime, anywhere, anyway. And it's real easy to sit there and think it's going to be a beautiful day like today, and we're not going to have to worry about winter clothing, we're not going to have to worry about wet weather clothing, we're not going to have to worry about anything. So when you're doing your home and hardening your home for disaster, and that is making your disaster kit, making sure that you have your 72 to 30 days of extra medication, whatever the case is, making sure that you have enough stuff for your pets, you know, your canned goods, being able to cook, whatever it is, water, always make sure that you're prepared for all of the seasons and all of the weather. And I go back to a couple of years ago, we had a major rain event, and it was in January or February. And the ground was so super saturated, we were starting to lose roadsides and hillsides. And if we would have had that big earthquake at that point in time, there's a thing called liquefaction. And it's essentially the ground liquefies through the vibration, and it becomes very fluid, and it's going to take the path of least resistance, and it's going to follow gravity, which means it's going to go downhill. So that means we have the potential to lose roads from collapse. We have the potential to lose roads from having rock falls and tree falls across it. So it's just, we could have been cut off. And it was in the worst of possible weather. The temperature was hovering around 35 or 40 degrees during the daytime. And we got, I think, 3 inches of rain over the course of 2 days. It was bad up here. And this was just a few years ago. So pick the worst scenario, add nighttime to it, and that's what you need to be prepared for. Okay, I'm off my soapbox for that. Now, I was asked, I don't know if any of you caught that private security stuck their face in here a few minutes ago, and I was just asked, they did put some information up over here. Tonight is their first patrol night. If you saw the town crier, right, JP, make sure I got it right. that Valley Forge Private Security is going to be doing part-time patrols up here in the business district, and they're looking for, I'm going to call them subscribers. I am not advertising for this. I'm just merely letting you know that tonight is the start of the patrol. And so that effort has launched in earnest, and you need to be aware of that. And that's, unless somebody's got some really specific questions of us or me, I'm going to step off. Yes?
Do we have a sign-up sheet?
There's 2 sign-up sheets going over here. I don't know which one's which, so I will let them explain that.
We'll be passing something out in just a second. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Chief, how many personnel do you have in your department?
On duty at any given time, no less than 4. And that, I actually meant to raise that point as well. And that is, the big one hits. We have between 3 and 6 personnel in Pine Cove, with an additional 2 on AMR staff. And then you have no less than 4 on duty 24 hours a day in Idyllwild. Do your math. How many of you are there? And if the big one hits, we're not going to be able to get everywhere immediately. And it's a priority basis, and it starts becoming numeric. And you just start working down that list of priorities. And that's where we're going to be relying on help. And we can't do it by ourselves. We just can't. And if we're lucky, Forest Service is on duty. That gives us a few extra people, a few extra bodies as well. But considering there's 3,500 to 8,500 people up here, it's a good weekend at any given time. That starts to become a lot of bodies with a few volunteers. So I encourage you to keep that in mind, that just because in the situation that we have seen with the hurricanes, with the earthquakes, with the wildland fires, don't be a statistic, don't be a victim. Be a help, not a hindrance. If we tell you to evacuate, get out of our way, folks, because if you stay behind, I'm going to tell you right now, that requires me to pull our resources off to contain the situation, to do a rescue. And you're potentially putting my people, our people, in harm's way. So, be a help, not a hindrance. If we tell you to evacuate, if we tell you to stay in your homes, follow our instructions. I can't encourage that enough. We had a woman in the mountain fire who said, I'm going to stay with my house. When the fire burnt over in Apple Valley, she had to be rescued. And it wasn't a matter of being optional. She had to be rescued. And the tapes are available. She's screaming into the phone, save me, help me, on 911. And that doesn't help us. And if you're watching what happened with the Canyon fire, they're going in, they told everybody evacuate, get out. And they get these people who are, I'm going to save my house. With the garden hose, I don't think so. Get out of my way. Okay? I can't tell you that enough. The mountain fire, I had retired firefighters staying behind up here thinking they were going to save their house. If you're not firefighter fit, you're not firefighter ready. I don't care what your background is, get out of our way and don't hinder us. And I just had a gentleman come into my office 2 weeks ago asking for me to write him some kind of a pass so he could get through the roadblock in case we close the hill this summer or to protect his home. He didn't get it. So, anyway, help us help you. Get your training, harden your homes, harden your families, make it so that you are not a victim. And Alex is here. Thank you, Mr. Tardy. I know you'll take a few minutes to get set up here.
While he does, I have a second appeal to make, but before I do, in regard to last winter's weather, it snowed. It snowed a lot. And Idyllwild became known as a snow destination. Ready or not, here they came. And out of that, another great group has been formed in Idyllwild, the snow group. Marcia, I'd like you to come up and explain what you're doing and the display and how you need help.
Thank you. Last year, 16-17 winter, we had unprecedented snows. And with those snows, after the weekends of the heavy snows, we had unprecedented numbers of snowplay visitors. The snowplay visitors are different than our regular visitors in that they only come for the snow. Our usual visitors kind of are absorbed by our village year-round because they're eating in restaurants and they're browsing in shops. But the snow play visitors were focused on snow. So the result of that is that they saw the sign that said Humber Park, which is not plowed during heavy snows, and it also said parking area, so they were flocking into Fern Valley. When they found there was no park available, no parking areas, then they spread into the residential areas. The same thing happened, I know, in Pine Cove, and they wreaked havoc for the residents with parking on our two-lane roads, trespassing on private property, littering, and leaving just lots of really nasty stuff behind. From the statistics we've looked at, it doesn't look like the snow visitor numbers are going to recede any. If you Google Idyllwild and snow, you will find TripAdvisor, Yahoo, everybody in the world on mass media talking about how wonderful Idyllwild is as a snow destination. You will see pictures that have nothing to do with Idyllwild. They're from Big Bear, they're from every place else, but very few are actually from Idyllwild. The other aspect of this work is the population growth. If you look at the desert, if you look at the Banning Pass area, and if you look at Hemet and all of Riverside County west of us, the statistics that are there for the 30-year growth, Riverside County is going to increase by 74%. That's huge. So Idyllwild is going to remain, I think, for a long, long time, an increasingly popular snow play destination. The problem is that Idyllwild has no defenses and no preparation for this. So therefore, the snow group formed up to try to find some solutions. One of the solutions that everybody seems to agree with is that we need to have more law enforcement presence during those snow play weekends. Everybody also agrees, including Leonard Purvis. He's the captain and he is the commander of the Hemet Sheriff Station. What Idyllwilders can do, two things really, to be proactive, to take action on their own behalfs, and one of those is to make calls to the sheriff's office for anything that is going on, large or small crime, because those calls are counted. When the numbers are looked at in Riverside County, if there are no numbers, if there are no situations that the sheriff has to respond to, it looks like the area is doing pretty well. If there are situations the sheriff has to respond to, then those numbers are counted. And there is more likelihood of us getting greater law enforcement coverage if we make phone calls. Kind of working against that is the fact that most people up here are pretty independent and pretty self-reliant. However, if we are going to get that law enforcement coverage increased, we really have to make calls. So to that end, the snow group has had magnets made for the refrigerators. We're going to be giving them out free tonight after the meeting. The point of that is to have it easy and handy to find the non-emergency number for sheriff and for CHP. Emergency is always 911. But most people don't know the non-emergency number. Oh, and it's too much trouble to look it up, and maybe it'll take them too much time to get here, and da-da-da-da-da. Don't overthink it. If there's something going on in your yard or your neighborhood, call, please. You're helping everybody. Oh, and here we have a display of what this magnet looks like.
They're small.
The magnets, however, are very small. They fit right onto your refrigerator. So, as I said, we've had these made. We're going to hand those out free tonight. We're also handing them out at the post office, our time-honored way of getting the word out. October 6th, which is a Friday, 1 to 3, we'll be at the post office handing out magnets to anybody who stops by. The other thing that we're doing tonight, because this is another thing that residents can do, is to put a sign in your yard on the weekends when the snow play visitors are there. We're not advocating everybody, plastering neighborhoods all year round, just on the snow play weekends. We've got 2 signs, and here comes Kathy again. One of them is a this one right here, and this one is $4. If you'd like to have one of these, and the point of this one is, you just stick it in the berm and leave it there during that weekend. The other sign is more substantial. It's meant to attach to a post that you can buy at either of our hardware stores. And that one, again, you can put in the berm or you can put it in a ready-made hole in the ground. So those were the things that we're offering up tonight, and we have meetings with more agencies coming in the future, and we're hoping to get some more solutions. But for the moment, that's what we're looking to do. So thank you so much. Oh, and a question? Yes, go ahead.
Marsha, are there any designated snow areas that people can say go there, go, get out of there?
We do have, the first page of our website has been redesigned to actually point people to Big Bear and other areas. How many people will see that, I don't know. We do have some. When we started this group, we didn't even know that we had any. But we do have them, and they are specifically Idyllwild Park, which is county, San Jacinto State Park, which is state. The county's nature center is also designated as one. And Thousand Trails has said that they have a snow play area. We have talked to individuals at the county level about adding more snow play areas via some of the other county parks that are between here and Banning specifically. So at this time, though, there are no signs designated to point people in the right direction. And that's one thing we are working on.
That would seem to be useful, yeah.
I think it would be very useful because if people do come up here, we'd like to point them to the right place to go to. So, yeah.
I live down Poplar Flats. Do your police departments and everything tell you how many patrolmen they have around for your area?
Very few, yes. I mean, literally 1 to 3 for the entire year.
Have to be patient.
Yes.
When they can, be patient.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you, and everything you do. Okay, I got way over here. I thought I'd have plenty of time for this last appeal, but I don't. I'm going to make it short, but I'm going to ask you for your help, and that is supporting the board of MDP. I'm going to show you our organization. I'm going to ask you what I'd like you to consider. We have a slate of officers that are elected, a president, which is me, vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Next slide are our directors. We've got a director of DAS operations. He is here tonight. Tom manages all the inventory in the DAS unit. Makes sure the gas is replenished and the batteries are up to speed and does all of that. On top of that, our DAS commanders and captains, those that are the top leaders of each DAS unit, report to Tom. Next.
How many?
8. The Director of Communications, BJ Briggs, manages our communication network, our 2 repeaters, our 34 radios, our 7 for the medical group. All of that is under the communication lead of BJ Briggs. It's a closed radio network just for MDP, for the use of our CERT teams during search and rescue, reporting injury back to the advanced treatment area, things of that nature. But that is a director of communications. We have co-directors, Dick Goldberg and Gigi Kramer, are co-directors of our medical group. They consist of how many nurses and doctors?
A billion.
Yeah. People that would go to the DAS units for first aid, the more technically trained go to our advanced treatment area at Idyllwild Pines and would care for the more seriously injured in our community at that site. We have the Director of Internet Communications, which is Francoise. She manages Idyllwild Emergency and currently our internet and our website. and Facebook and Twitter and all of our other social media outlets. Yeah, I should be good. And next is an open position, Director of PR. Currently, there are 3 or 4 of us on the board that are doing it, but that handles those responsibilities are advertising, community outreach, organizing a meeting like this, and our website. Posting the video to our website after a meeting like this. And then what we're looking for too is a training director for CERT. Somebody to coordinate the needs of the community. Who wants to participate in CERT class? How many refreshers do we need? What other training do we need? Coordinating those needs with Idyllwild Fire to get them organized and scheduled. I know it's easy to sit back and let other people do things, but our board has been together for 5 to 7 years. Bob's been on it for more than 10. Dick has been on it for more than 10. As president, I got to look at the future, and I'm concerned about the future of mountain disaster preparedness when it is only being managed by a handful. And what we decided at our last board meeting, we would like to offer people that would be interested co-positions on our board. It's not a year-long commitment. You wouldn't be elected. We would give you the opportunity, however, to attend our board meetings, see how we operate, see how non-political we are, see how we honor our mission statement, and give you an idea as to what serving on our board would mean. No commitment. We meet 9 times a year. We meet in January. We calendar the entire year. We budget for the entire year. So there's no snowball effect here. We start in the beginning and we run it just like this was scheduled for September. We run it like that. I'm going to ask that some of our board hand out a assignment sheet. I will personally call anybody who puts their name down. There are 2 categories: board support, which we really need, and CERT interest. And I'll call you and I'll talk to you about what we need and how you might be able to help. So if you sign tonight, all it means is I'm going to be calling. And I won't be holding a gun to your head, but I am looking for support. I do not want this organization to die. And without new blood and without new volunteers to manage it, I'm afraid. So, with all that good news, Marcia,
Are you going to have a refresher course anytime soon?
we'll have, we need to hear from our CERT people what they need to know.
I need a refresher course.
We've all already talked to the fire department. I don't want to train you people in an area that they're never going to use us. If they're not going to use us to lift boards off of broken, a collapsed house, then don't train us for that. But if they are going to use us for canvassing the neighborhoods and giving feedback, this hill is going to be affected in different areas in different ways. So Fern Valley could have a bigger issue than Pine Cove or vice versa. And that's one of the other things about this board. We got a big initiative coming up in 2018. We are looking at adding to our 8 gas units, adding another one to Upper Fern Valley, which is underserved right now. And it's a big financial commitment. But we're working with the water district up there. We're going to be buying the container and expanding our reach in terms of services we can provide in the event. That's what we do. We're looked up to in the community. We're supported by the community. And we need new blood to continue what they expect of us. So that's it. Did I preach well, Bob?
Yes.
Did I pass around the plate? All right, Alex, where are you? our guest speaker. I told them before you arrived, Alex, that when I called you, I said, what the heck is going on? A dry El Nino, a wet La Nina? Can we even forecast what we're looking at next year? So Alex, as I mentioned, has been in San Bernardino this morning, in Huntington Beach this afternoon, in Idyllwild tonight, and I'm going to give the mic over to him and let us tell us how many snow people we're going to have this winter and how much snow we're going to get. Alex.
December 24th, snowstorm.
All right, she's just loading it up, and you're using a free open source software, it looks like.
Free, we always make a donation.
Okay. It certainly didn't say it was PowerPoint, so some of the slides may be skewed.
I know, but that's the best we can do.
Okay, so put it in play mode, and we'll work with it. It looks okay. I want to let you know, if you have to leave, make sure you grab a cloud chart and a weather passport. And the weather passport gives you information about Southern California weather. You might find it actually as a good talking and reading material. And then the cloud chart is for what you probably do all the time. You look at the sky and see a cloud, and what's that? That should help you with that. So please take those. Take 2, take 3 if you have a friend. They're free for you. And but don't take all the food, because I might grab one of those on my way back. So, do I need the microphone? Does everyone hear me okay?
You're fine.
Good? Okay. So yeah, I had an interesting day. So I had a meeting in San Bernardino. My office for the National Weather Service is located in Rancho Bernardo. I live in Carlsbad, so I went Carlsbad, Rancho Bernardo, San Bernardino. So they had a winter workshop with the Department of Water Resources out of Sacramento, and then the Office of Emergency Services. There were some folks from Riverside there as well. Then I had to go to Huntington Beach. They have an air show, and if you're not doing anything this weekend, you might want to check it out. The Blue Angels are there. And so we're having a booth there, and we're going to be giving out cloud charts and lots of other things. So I was in Huntington Beach, and I said, you know what, I might as well stop and see the emergency manager in Seal Beach, because I owe him a couple of weather radios. So I drove up there. Long story short, I plug in Google, Idyllwild, Town Hall. 3 hours? What? So I called Mike up, and I said, Mike, you gotta help me, you gotta give me a helicopter. And he's like, I don't even know if I have a projector for you, Alex. But anyway, Mike pulled through, he's got the projector going, he didn't have the helicopter that I needed, and Google was right on the money. It said, wow, it's 6:35. You know how when you're driving, if you ever use Google or the Apple Maps, and you're like, I hope this is wrong, I hope this is wrong. And it's like, it's usually wrong the other way, where you're later and later and later. So anyway, we made it here. I do have some good news for you about the snow, and we'll get into that as we go on. Maybe good news. If you like snow, or if you don't like snow. We've had a crazy couple years. Mike called me up and said, do you want to talk about those years? And I said, yeah, certainly. There is disaster after disaster after disaster. You can't make these up. So we have Harvey, Irma, and now we have another disaster in Puerto Rico. Even though it's not the United States, it's still going to go down as a huge impact economically for FEMA and for our nation as a whole. So just this year alone, when this gets updated with Maria, everything going up. Just crazy. If it wasn't bad enough, so far in California, we have had the driest period up until last winter. So up until last winter, we had the driest period. I'll stand over here because I got a clicker, so I can make sure you guys see and point things out. This period from 2011 to 16 is the driest period for Southern California. What does Southern California coastal mean? It means it includes the mountains, it includes the coast. We could look at one point. I don't know if you want. Oh, this one's got one. Thank you. Yeah. This one's got one. It includes everything. So what we do is we look at individual stations. We look at San Diego. We look at Idyllwild. We look at all of them together, and they all say the same thing. And so it kind of double, triple verifies what we're looking at. So if one station is saying you're the driest station ever, okay, whatever. Look at another station. Look at all the stations combined. Look at it as a region. And so this kind of simplifies it, and as a region, all of Southern California, Mountain Valley, coast, deserts, the driest period we've seen in modern records. And then I mentioned individual stations. We can look at individual stations. And one of the stations I looked at was Santa Ana in Orange County. And they had last year as much rain in 1 year as they had in 3 years combined. So what we do when we're looking at the climate and climate variability in the past season, you and I, a lot of times we look at one storm and remember that one storm. And that one storm surprises us or impresses us or disappoints us. In this case, we like to look at all the storms combined and see how it comes out. We're still running deficits even though we've had big improvement over our region. Now, here's something more local in your backyard. So I kind of had fun with this slide, and this kind of goes to what Mike is talking about, El Nino, La Nina, what is all this, and nothing seems to add up right, the forecast is wrong, all that. So take a look at this here. So Idyllwild, the past 2 wettest seasons were both La Nina. So just to recap, those who aren't familiar with El Nino and La Nina. So La Nina is the cold phase in the Pacific Ocean, way down by the equator. El Nino is the warm phase, way down by the equator. They never really had anything to do with rain, snow, wind, until the media got a hold of it, and we started, flooding, rain, wind, snow, El Nino. But if you sent this to the media and said, wow, El Nino doesn't produce the rain or snow, it's La Nina, they're probably going to ignore you, or they're going to be confused. They're going to think that the data's bad. So take a good look at this. So the past 2 wettest seasons since 2008 were La Ninas. So imagine if I brought this up to my professor in school. I'm going to write a paper on La Nina is what brings wet weather to Southern California. The problem is that's the same thing we did with El Nino. We had 1997, 98, we had 82, 83. Someone brought the paper to the professor and said, I got it! What brings rain to Southern California is El Nino. Flash forward 10 years later, no, it's La Nina. So what in the world's going on? And you see, it's Riverside, it's Redlands, it's Big Bear. It's not just the microclimate of Idyllwild. In order to get the storms that you guys love or hate, we all have to have the same jet stream, and we'll talk more about that. So digest those numbers a little bit, and you can talk about the El Nino years all you want. Here's an El Nino year, here's an El Nino year, here's a nothing year. But the bottom line is the numbers came out the way they came out. We got a lot more work to do to figure out. Okay, so not only was that the driest period, it was the warmest. And this never gets talked about very much, and I don't know why. And this relates to the snow that we're going to talk about. During the same period, 2011 all up to 16, I looked at 12 months, 24 months, 48 months, 60 months. It all ended up being the same for Southern California. The warmest period on record. And in some cases, it wasn't even close. So I looked at Southern California coast. I looked at Northern California. I looked at all of California. And when you add up all the different numbers together, average them, divide by whatever, it comes out to be the warmest ever. These records, by the way, go back to about 1900. Okay, so let's flash forward to this past summer. You know, El Nino's gone. Last year it rained, snowed a little bit. Things greened up. Now we go to summer. Maybe we'll see something normal. Well, we jump into the summer of 2017, and holy smokes, the first part of June into early July was one of the warmest periods we've ever seen in some places. Deserts, mountains, coast. Take a look at this here. We had 15 to 20 days that were over 90. We had a staggering 6 to 8 degrees above normal over most of our region, valleys, mountains, deserts. To give you perspective, 6 to 8 degrees may not sound like much to you. You're not going to, over the course of a month, you're not going to notice probably 1 or 2 degrees. 3 or 4, well, you might be a little annoyed a couple days. 5 or 6, your AC bill or other energy uses and your mood is definitely going to swing. When you start talking 6 to 8, you're talking all-time warmest periods on record. When you talk 9, you're probably experiencing the warmest period. So again, this is an average of temperatures from the middle of June to middle of July, divided by the number of days, and we still come out almost at the end of the spectrum. So we started the summer off really, really hot, despite the really wet winter, the snow we had, and so forth. It's not just the high temperature. When you break it down to the high temperature, when you and I are awake during the day, or we're spending time outdoors, or we're running the AC, yeah, that was important. Look at our low temperatures. Widespread 8 degrees above normal for the first part of the month. Now, can you look at this and say, oh, it's climate change, it's global warming? No, it's only a month period. But it's a continuing trend of what we've seen since 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And it's really on the edge of the spectrum. All right, then we had a little break. And then late June into late September, when you average that period, we ended up being about 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees above normal. Not nearly as much bright red with a lot of orange in there. Now, what you don't see when you smooth all the numbers out is this. Late August and September. Do you remember that heat wave? Well, I have Idyllwild in here, thanks to the reporting station in Idyllwild, which we'll talk about a little bit too. 90, 91, 92, 94. You probably got used to it. You're probably like, give me 100. 94, 93, 92, right? It's no big deal. It's normal, right? You're thinking it's normal, but it's way off from normal. How about our friends in the Inland Empire? I cannot find a temperature ever recorded of 114 in Ontario. I cannot find a temperature except one time in 2006 at the Ramona Fire Station. And they keep records back to like 1910, where it was 111 in Ramona. So the bottom line was, even though it didn't show up on this map as being really odd, because I averaged it all together, that one particular heat wave was intense. Now, keep in mind, our friends down in Palm Springs, anyone come up from Palm Springs? Our friends in Palm Springs, we can talk bad about them. Our friends in Palm Springs,
There was one.
they left, they hit 122 4 times this summer. Now, you know, if you're in the elevator shooting the breeze with someone talking about the weather, you know, their response is probably going to be, oh yeah, they're used to it, it's always 122 there. Their all-time record's 123. I went out there, I know this sounds crazy, to witness it, and it's like opening your oven door to see if the cookies are ready, and the heat comes at you, except you can't close the door. It's constant, and it's insane. I talked to people at anyone been to the Aviation Museum down there? It's kind of cool. Yeah. There are some World War II veterans, like near 90 there, and they said they never experienced anything like it. Nothing like it. And it's just one thing after another. Okay, let's go back to where it's nice and cool in Idyllwild. When you look at this past summer, June through August, it does make the top 10. And one of our warmest summers ever was not too long ago, 2013. 2017's here. 2016's here. 2014's here. All our recent years are in the top 10 for Idyllwild, for the warmest summers. Now, when you look at the annual temperature, like the whole year, like, you know, why was my energy bill so high? Why did things not grow so well? Why were the birds flying north instead of south? So when you look at the whole year, 2017 is right behind 2014 as the warmest. And the only one in between there is 1951. 2012, 2013. And you can see, no matter how you slice and dice it, what you've done for me lately keeps showing up at the top. Whether you look at minimum temperatures, annual temperatures, monthly temperatures. Okay, I promised you about snow. And, you know, the more I look at these numbers, the more I don't want to look at them. So the discussion was, well, snow, and people are going to come up here. Is Idyllwild going to turn into the next Wrightwood? Have you been to Wrightwood when it snows? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. I grew up in plenty of snow. I grew up in northern New England, and there was snow everywhere. Then it melted, then it rained, and it snowed, all in the month of January. But in Wrightwood, when it snows, the city of LA goes up there. So here's the good news, that it's becoming increasingly difficult to not only snow in Idyllwild, but also to keep it on the ground by the time they make it up here. It keeps melting faster and faster. And here's 1950, and here's 2017. So back in 1950, the average low temperature, like overnight low temperature, was down around 35 degrees, average. So you had some days where it was 20, some days where it was 50. The average during the course of the year. And ever since, it just keeps going up and up and up and up. And now, the average low temperature is about 40. So we're talking in 60 years, we have increased the average low temperature of about 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit, just in that short period of time. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because it's a sure indication that the atmosphere is warming, that it's going to be harder for the snow to stay. It doesn't mean it's not going to snow. It just means our winters are going to be shorter and warmer. Dermatologists used to tell me this all the time back 20 years ago, and I thought he was crazy. I was like, what are you reading? You know, what are you looking at? You know, and sure enough, when I start looking at the data for California, it just keeps showing the same thing. All right, what about Big Bear? Just make snow, right? They'll all go to Big Bear, just send them up there, just turn the snow gun. The problem is the snow guns don't work when it's above 32 degrees, unless it's really dry out. Because they use wet bulb temperature, which is basically the temperature like when you get out of the shower and you feel cold. The evaporative temperature. So 2017, and I'm going to give a presentation to Big Bear coming up this winter. Sometimes the ski resort folks show up, and Wrightwood they definitely do. And this is the point where they're like leaving to go to the bathroom. They don't want to see this information. So we are looking, we still got some time. We better get some cold weather. We still got some time. But we're looking at the warmest average minimum temperature in Big Bear ever in 2017. And if it's comforting, 2014, 15, 16 are all neck and neck. And Big Bear's got some pretty deep records. They go back when they built the dam and the reservoir there. The records go way back to then. So pretty depressing. This is why it also matters. I drove by the canyon fire on Highway 91. And when it rains, it's going to rain this winter. Just a matter of when and how much. There's going to be some big problems with slides there. It's literally, the whole side of the mountain is burned off, pointed at Highway 91. So why it matters is the warmer temperatures you get, the more stress it has on vegetation and the drier the fuels are. And the earth is pretty resilient. The trees are resilient, the native vegetation is resilient. But over time, you keep warming things up. You keep lowering the humidity, you put stress. And in 2016, during that summer, which was the peak of our drought, we saw some of the lowest fuel moisture levels we've ever seen. And when we did get ignition, like the Blue Cut fire, it burned 25,000 acres in 24 hours without Santa Ana winds. 25,000 acres in 24 hours without Santa Ana winds because the fuels were so dry. And this is what it looked like. They call that moonscaping, where basically it just burns everything out of the way. So fuel moisture is really important. Now, this is the Blue Cut fire, and it burned incredibly, completely out of control. This is now what the Highway 91 slope looks like, even though this is Blue Cut. And Blue Cut ran, it slid, you saw in the news last year, big time. It also took out part of 15, and Highway 138 was pretty much unusable up to Wrightwood for a long time. So temperature, humidity, lack of snow, dryness, they all kind of go hand in hand. It's kind of negative feedback. They make each other worse, and this is the end result. All right, let's talk about something good. The atmosphere last year was angry. It tried to make up for 5 years with just a couple storms. And it almost did it. It almost did it. For Northern California, it did it. And where is this moisture coming from? It's coming from these atmospheric rivers. It's a new word, but it's old information. It's basically our way of getting tropical. So the way the planet works is the tropics are loaded with heat and moisture. If you like humidity, go down there. Heat and moisture, okay? And the East Coast, it comes in the form of hurricanes. In the West Coast, it comes in the form of hurricanes too, but they move the opposite way, so they typically miss us. Well, we get it from the same source region, except it's not a hurricane, it's a Pacific storm, but it's still tapped into the same region. So in other words, we're taking the same moisture, the same ingredients from the tropics as Hurricane Maria, as Hurricane Irma, the same moisture, except it's being stretched out, and we call it a river because it's literally a river of moisture. So what happened last winter? Okay, here's where it gets really fun. So you're thinking about the El Nino, or maybe not. You're thinking about La Nina, maybe not. Last winter, here was our storm track. It basically was across San Francisco into Salt Lake City. And so we were right in the thick of it. Okay? And this is not one storm. This is the whole winter averaged out. And here's the storm track. These blobs here are unusual warmth or cold in the atmosphere, meaning the atmosphere is completely out of whack. Here's El Nino just 2 years ago. Now, on paper and in your backyard, it looked like El Nino failed completely, miserably. But over the Pacific Ocean, not only did it not fail, it was unbelievably powerful, but it rained on fish. Literally. And then turned up to Seattle, where they had one of their wettest years on record. So why was the El Nino year, why was everything working out in the Pacific Ocean, but not close enough to reach us? And then the following year, the weather pattern pretty much shifted over us, so we were in the gun. We were in the hose. Now, what my wife tells me is it just was delayed by a year. Well, the atmosphere doesn't have a memory like that. At least it's not supposed to. It's supposed to have a short-term memory, like a lot of us, like a month. Maybe 2 months if you stretch it. It usually doesn't remember a year ago, okay? So usually what's going on in the ocean and the atmosphere doesn't really matter. So 2016, not only did we have a powerful jet stream that was persistent, storm after storm after storm after storm, over the fish, the next year we had a similar weather pattern, completely shifted east and south, and we got the rain. We completely got the rain and the snow. Here's what it looked like. So across California, not only was it wet, it was very wet, very much above normal. All these purple shaded areas from last winter are about 200% of normal. So basically you get 2 winters in one. And in our region, we have purple and blue, which is basically 1.5 to 2 winters in one. All of this during a weak La Nina last year. Very wet. And you can see it wasn't just us. Northern California, the northern Great Basin, very wet. When the rain started in January, they came in a fury. The Sierra Nevada received over 20 inches of rain in one storm cycle, about a 1 week time. 1 week time, 20 inches of rain. So that much rain over the entire area in just a matter of a week. So it started off crazy. Did I already show that? The period from October, when it normally starts kind of raining, to February, where it kind of peaks out, not only was it wet in the state of California, so this is looking at all of California, it was the wettest ever. An average of 28 inches. So this averages mountains, deserts, coast, valleys, averages all together. The period from October to February, the wettest ever. And you can see back in the 70s, we had a period like that. Back in the the El Nino of 97, 98, we had a period like that. But this one beat them all. And you have to go all the way back to 1916, 18. You probably don't remember those years. There was big flooding in San Diego back in those years. Pretty much put the city underwater, like Del Mar in that area. Remarkable. Here's another thing that's remarkable. So, how many of you have been to Hawaii? So, about half of you. It's lucky you. So, Hawaii has places that that average 200, 300 inches of rain per year. We had places in this, and they're in the tropics. We had places in the Sierra Nevada that get up to 160 inches of rain just last year. And all that water went into Lake Oroville, where there 160 inches of rain. Think about that. That's a lot of water. Now wait till I show you the snow. It might fall out of your seat. The Sierra Nevada precipitation, when you add snow and rain together, not only was it impressive with all these individual atmospheric rivers. So what this shows you is, it says, okay, cut to the chase. Does it really matter if it rains in San Jose? Does it really matter if it rains in Sacramento? Does it really matter if it rains in Idyllwild, if we're taking our water from Northern California and the Colorado River Basin and plumbing it? This shows us the heart of where it does matter, and it was the wettest period ever. You could talk to meteorologists, you could talk to climatologists, and they would say, oh, not in my lifetime. Oh, not in my lifetime. Well, they keep seeing these not in my lifetime things in their lifetime. 200% of average, it exceeded the major winter of 82, 83, which was when El Nino was discovered, 82, 83. And it exceeded it with ease. Don't you love when records are broken? But it's like playing with fire. People can get hurt, things can break, you can get a little too much of a good thing. Look at our wonderful El Nino 2015-16. It was average, and we were excited, right? We were really excited. It was an average winter during our worst drought on modern records. Hey, look at our friend 2010-11. And that was another La Nina year. So what you're seeing here is El Nino with a La Nina on top and a La Nina below, sandwiched in between. I'll show you a better graph that shows you that in a minute. It brought good things to our reservoirs, pretty much filled them all up. They were nearly empty. Oroville actually reported 101%, which is not good if you're going to use your calculator. That means it's spilling over. The Diamond Valley Reservoir was at 36% during the worst part of our drought in 2015, and it rocketed this spring, early summer, up to 87%. Lake Oroville received 700,000 acre-feet in 1 week. How much is 700,000 acre-feet? Who the heck knows? It's the entire Diamond Valley Reservoir in Temecula. They got it in 1 week. And basically, Lake Oroville went from 40% capacity to 80% in about a month and a half. Huge number. And again, like I said, with good things comes bad things. With the one event we had in January, we were seeing 3 to 4 inches of rain in just a matter of like a minute. In a matter of 12 hours. Minutes. And too much water, too much flooding. In the Cajon Pass, same thing. They're blurry because they're screen captures of video. High water rescues in the Cajon Pass, an event. Caltrans, just up the road here. Massive boulders. Hopefully these aren't photos that you took. Then snow came, and we actually had to break the plows out. A lot of the plows probably didn't work. Here's a problem we had in Big Bear. They had so much snow after the January storm, 60 inches in about a week, that people couldn't see around the corner. When they're driving, they couldn't see around the corner. Incredible. After the drought we went through. And believe it or not, we actually had an avalanche on Mount Baldy that required rescues. So we got so much snow, so much compacting, so much different layers on top of each other, we actually had a real avalanche. Here's another photo of snow removal with rain removing itself in the Inland Empire. High desert erosion, so basically that was a flat filled sediment area, i.e. road, and it got scoured out. If that wasn't bad enough, then we had a storm in February which actually resembled a storm like the East Coast people see. They call them nor'easters. This storm was so powerful that it actually deepened, which is very unusual for us, deepened as it moved across Southern California. And what that means is that we had wind and a lot of it with both of those storms, including this one. Here's a really geeky map. So what this is it's showing low pressure moving across the Pacific and actually deepening. So in other words, if you paid attention very close to the hurricanes, they talked about what the central pressure of the storm was, and that meant it might be deepening. Well, they do the same thing on the East Coast for snowstorms. In the West Coast, we usually don't have to do that, because usually the storms that are coming in are very mature and they're weakening. This storm actually set a record by deepening as it approached Southern California. Not weakening, deepening. So we call that fancy word cyclogenesis. You can Google that and read about it. This is what happened when you mess around with cyclogenesis. We lost part of Interstate 15 from, again, about 4 inches of rain in 12 hours on the desert side. It was on the desert side, so like by Mormon Rock in that area. 4 inches of rain in 12 hours from that particular storm as it moved in. Here's some more photos of that. We actually had a fatality up in Victorville because the rain spilled up into the high desert, and you mix that kind of rainfall in a short period of time in the high desert, not good. Here's another truck or semi that didn't come out so well. That creek filled up completely and scoured out the interstate as it moved through. Remember I talked about the Blue Cut fire. This is probably what we're going to see on Highway 91 at some point this winter. The Blue Cut fire literally let loose everywhere, all directions. Fortunately, with the Blue Cut fire, most of the terrain wasn't steep, but it still let loose and spread out all over the place across that region. Another shot of the fatality. There was a rescue in there and a fatality on that event. Pretty dramatic. All right, I promised you a sandwich, and this is maybe not the sandwich you're thinking of. So when you look at October through March of last year, in California, the only year that was wetter was 82, 83, the big El Nino year. The year below last year was 97, 98, another El Nino year. You won't have a test of this, so you don't need to remember. But in between it was our last year, our La Nina year. So in other words, everything we thought that El Nino is the only way You know, we could break out of drought. It's the only way we really have flood problems. It's the only thing we really need to be concerned about. If we can forecast El Nino, we can get the winter right, and we know how to prepare. Last winter, almost like it's just playing a joke on us, is the second wettest, sandwiched in between our two El Nino years. And we know what El Nino 2 years ago did. It didn't do much. All right, I promised you snow. This is my favorite stuff. So I'll slow down a little bit with this because I like snow. Love to hate snow. This is the only reason why I follow weather is because of snow. So imagine growing up as a kid and the weather, you probably guys never seen this anymore because we don't miss forecasts anymore. Imagine the weather forecast is 10 inches of snow in Idyllwild. So you either get psyched or you get depressed or you get your shovel out. And then imagine it rains the whole time and there's no snow. Or how about the other way? Imagine the weather forecast is 2 inches of snow and you get 3 feet. That doesn't happen in Idyllwild, right? No. Never. Forecast is always right on. I can vouch for that. You start getting a little curious, at least I did. What the heck is going on? How can I not get this stuff right? All right, let's look at some of the snow from last year. So, it wasn't the snowiest year ever, but it was close in California. It was close. At some point during the winter, 237 inches of snow was up at 8,000 feet near Donner Summit. If you know where that is, it's in the heart of Lake Tahoe. What were the wettest or the snowiest years? Well, again, it was our mother El Nino, 82, 83, 97, 98, and then here we were, sandwiched right in between, almost the snowiest year on record. And this is snowpack, so this is a cumulative. This isn't just, fluff, as you would say in snow terms. Here's a photo to prove it. I emailed the ski patrol up at Lake Tahoe. I was like, you were reporting 237 inches of snow. Let me see it. And so they sent me a photo. By the time they got the photo to me, the snow was settling as they took the photo. Imagine the weight of 237 inches of snow. It's going to settle. And there it was, 236. And that was their peak during the year. Pretty incredible. It snowed so much that Mammoth, some of their older lifts, they couldn't use them anymore. This guy here asking for trouble when he drives down the hill. This here, closed for business. Too much snow. And then here is the street sign. So 700 inches of snow, or 58 feet, at 700 feet during the course of that winter. Mammoth remained open until early August because there was so much snow. This was their parking lot. And this isn't, like when I was a kid, and maybe you do this in Idyllwild, maybe you don't. Maybe you'll start doing this. You pile the snow up, and your dad says, what are you doing? I'm piling it higher and higher so that it lasts longer. Like, don't do that. You'll make it icy everywhere and stuff. And so when he went back inside, he'll pile it up. Why do we have snow so long? So this is actually like a cross-section of snow, a little bit of wind drift as well thrown in there. It's actually a cross-section. Someone's not doing what I used to do, intentionally trying to make an obnoxious snowbank. They take some photos over last weekend, and they still are finding snow up in some of the 8,000 foot, 9,000 foot areas of Lake Tahoe. And then to make matters worse, it snowed last week in that area. All right, what about our neck of the woods, courtesy of Caltrans? During the peak of our drought, it basically didn't snow in some places. If you blinked, you missed it. If you slept in, it would probably melt it. We literally had snow events, and you know about them here in Idyllwild, where it snows all night and it's sticking and you wake up at 8:30 and it's almost all gone. Well, that's what warm overnight low temperatures do for you in warm ground. So our average snowfall listed here, and we finally got even or surpassed. And even in one location, a couple locations, over 100 inches of snow. So that woke up the people in LA, and that's why they're coming back to Idyllwild, to Big Bear, to Wrightwood, to really see, did it really snow, like you see here. Here's the problem though. During all these periods of lack of snow, 2016 and 17, the average low temperature in Big Bear, warmest on record. You already showed you the numbers for Idyllwild. So we're still getting snow a little bit during the drought, a lot when we actually get storms. Here's our El Nino. You don't need me to do the math for some of these locations. Times 2, times what? 3? 3 times as much snow in El Nino. People would think, oh, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Well, that's how crazy our weather patterns have been. The average temperature in Big Bear Lake this year, 52 degrees. 52 degrees. So what about the drought? So the drought pretty much left us across the north, little residual down here, developed up in Montana. Let's talk a little bit about the drought. So from one winter last year, we were able to completely remove the drought. Here's what it was during the peak of February 15, peak of February 16. It was so widespread, so significant, you probably even stopped talking about it. You probably even stopped worrying about it. As my grandma used to say, rest in peace, Alex, don't worry about the weather forecast. You can't change it. There's nothing you can do about it. She was, I guess, right. But I tried to at least predict it. And then the drought of 2017, mostly gone. Here's a time cross-section of it, as you can see there. Now here's one problem. The drought's gone, the heat's still here. We have millions of trees, staggering numbers that are either, you probably see some around here, either dying, died, or dead. And so the drought was so massive that we're going to unfortunately have to talk about the drought even after a remarkably wet, one of the snowiest years on record last year, and we still are going to talk about the drought because of all the dead trees. So what about El Nino, you say? Someone left this on my doorstep after the El Nino. Can you read that? We were expecting Godzilla. Remember NASA went out and said that El Nino was so big that it was Godzilla? That was NASA. NASA went out there and said that. And so they're making fun. And here comes the, isn't that the gecko? Geico Insurance? Yeah. Okay, here's where it gets even, if you're confused, here's where it gets even more confusing. So 2015-16, El Nino, remember all the promises? We ended up being not only not normal, drier than normal. Seattle had one of its wettest years of record, okay? Let's pretend we're scientists and look at all the La Nina years and average them together. Average La Nina years? Okay, yeah, you got me here. It's yellow there. Almost the same colors, which means much above normal, almost twice as wet as it should be, almost twice. The La Nina, what we got. This is what we got. This is what you would not expect. The average La Nina years basically mimic our El Nino year of 2 years ago. At least for California. Who's playing games? Who's doing stuff? It's no longer funny. So, in other words, if you were going to make a prediction, I'm sure someone predicted it, right? Farmer's Almanac or something predicted it. Someone, if you were going to make a prediction for 2 years ago's El Nino, you would not have predicted this, because this is the average La Nina. You're predicting something that's the complete opposite. Okay? The complete opposite. And this is what ended up coming out. Complete flip-flop. I showed you this map before, and this is the map of the storm track of why it did what it's going to do. Basically, it was a flip opposite. El Nino sat over here, played with us, nothing happened. And then last year, it sat over us there. Now, you might be thinking, well, but I thought El Nino happened. Oh, it did. Remember, El Nino is the measure of ocean temperatures. Not rainfall, not snowfall, not wind, not how old you are. It's a measure of ocean temperatures. They just, the NOAA's Climate Prediction Center, part of the Aegis Hour report, just recalculated the numbers. They do that with hurricanes too. So like with Hurricane Irma, they say, it's 200 or 180 miles per hour. They'll go back and look at the data, when they're not time crunched, and see if they missed something. Maybe there was an aircraft that didn't report, type of thing, and they'll get new data. So they do that with El Nino too. They go back and look at the data. Not only was it stronger than 97, 98, or 82, 83, it is now the strongest on record, even though we didn't get much rain or snow. Because what El Nino actually is just a measure of ocean temperatures. And remember, it did affect our atmosphere, except it missed us by 600 miles. What's 600 miles? All right, we got mountains here. We'll make up for it. Doesn't work that way. The mountains can't make up for it if you're not in the storm track. So this El Nino is going to go down as the strongest on record, except the actual impact or the actual rain and snow was flip opposite of what you would expect and mimicked, almost entirely mimicked, exactly like its cousin, La Nina, the opposite, which would be cold. Here's the chart that shows it being the warmest on record compared to all other ones. And here's the laugher. So when you average up everyone's rain gauge, everyone's snow measurement, everything, for that El Nino of 2 years ago, that we're still trying to figure out. Here it is, down here. Oh, well, it wasn't the driest, so it wasn't dry. Here's normal. Ooh, we weren't even normal. Here's the average El Nino. So this is what you would have predicted, right? Now, if you're going to Las Vegas, unless you got some crazy scheme, you're gonna predict some reasonable number or some reasonable odds. If you're gonna bet on the Yankees and the Red Sox, well, that's not a good example. You're gonna pick the Red Sox, but you're gonna easily go with what the odds are, right? Or at least what the average odds were. Here's the wettest years. You're not gonna do that, right? Because then, if you're right, you're a hero. If you're wrong, you're not going to come out of your cave. This is what happened. This is what the average is. So this is 11 inches of precipitation across all of Southern California when you average them all together from that El Nino year. So not only was it a dud, it didn't even materialize to normal and didn't even come close to the wettest. This is what it looked like on paper. Remember I showed you that map before? Not only were we dry, we were 25 to 50% of normal for most of our region. In your region, in Iowa, you were about 50, 60% of normal. You got about half of what you would on any given year during that El Nino. Just put up. Here's insult to injury. If you think it wasn't worse, it gets worse. So during that El Nino winter, 2 years ago, the strongest El Nino on record, not only did it not rain and snow much, February of 2016 was the warmest on record. So not only did it not snow, did it not rain, the heart of the winter, with the warmest ocean temperatures in effect, it was the warmest February ever. It was 90 degrees multiple times along the coast. Our mountains, ridiculous. No rain, no snow, record warm temperature. The good news is that what storms we did get took our reservoirs from their all-time lows of 20-25% capacity up to 70, 80. But again, remember the storm track all went north of us, so it didn't help us here in Southern California. It basically helped us just in the north. All right, this is towards the end of the presentation. Shifting gears a little bit here. So we thought El Nino brought us a lot of rain and snow. We thought El Nino brought us, the end of drought and things like that. We didn't know El Nino brought us La Nina. So El Nino brought us La Nina conditions, so to speak. The other thing that kind of threw us for a loop is that before the El Nino even developed, we had the warmest ocean temperatures we've seen along the coast. Before the El Nino even developed. We were seeing temperatures in the upper 70s. Before El Nino even formed. So there was no big warm pool like I showed you in that graphic. And we were having temperatures in the upper 70s. Lifeguards were describing it Florida-like. the ocean temperatures again didn't cool off. We had temperatures in the upper 70s again the following year, last year. San Diego City recorded 7,000 rip current rescues because people were going in the water. And most of them don't know how to swim. They don't know what a rip current is, let alone what El Nino is. And they basically were overwhelmed. So back-to-back years of temperatures. Here's a kind of schematic of it. So what usually happens is El Nino warms the ocean. It's kind of a normal thing to have El Nino. Warms the ocean, some of that water gets sent up to our coast, and the black line is our coast, the red line is El Nino. They're usually in phase. They're usually, whoops. That's why the smart scientists came out and said, oh, there's a blob. Unfortunately, what this blob might be is a reflection of the ocean trying, remember all those numbers I showed you, how we were the warmest nights, the warmest days, the warmest this, the warmest that. The bottom line is the past 5 years have been the warmest on record. They were the driest on record, and they've been the warmest on record. And this summer, we haven't skipped a beat. We continue to see incredible warmth. The ocean is saying, okay, I'll get rid of it for you, but it's having trouble. It's a very natural thing for the ocean to absorb heat. It's good at it. We learned that in 5th grade science. Heat capacity of water is really high. Problem is that the ocean continues to remain warm regardless of El Nino, regardless of what's going on. Pretty staggering. Then, come warm water, come warm air, when things are warm, they're fluffier, they're more buoyant, they float, they expand. We also saw the highest water level ever in La Jolla because of that warm water, because of that buoyancy of the water. So in other words, we're seeing all these climate extremes of, okay, ever, first, record, making it more important that we record all this now, so 50, 60, 100 years later, we can make sure we're objective in looking at it. By the way, I just was told, some of you may know George Tate. Anyone know George Tate? You do?
The country singer?
Is he? He's a great snowfall observer.
He works at the tram.
Yeah, so he is moving, and he runs an automated weather station and records snowfall for Idyllwild and reports to us. And he's leaving. So we're going to be looking for a new observer in Idyllwild. So in other words, when you go to weather.gov and you click on Idyllwild and you check out the forecast, and then it says, well, the current conditions in Idyllwild are, it's reading one of George's instruments to make that happen. And he's leaving. His weather station's moving, gone with him. So he was just doing that for fun, volunteer. I do it too, because I'm a crazy weatherman, but he was just doing it for fun and for interest in weather. So we will be looking for another observer up in this area, not only to report the snow, but so when you go to any web page, whether it be Weather Underground or anything, it pops up, you know, current temperatures 40, wind speeds this, that type of thing. So we're just seeing incredible imbalance of extremes. That's all I got. I hope that you leave this presentation thinking that things are extreme. It is almost like we're making it up. And that things are out of whack. We had our biggest El Nino, our worst drought, our warmest temperatures, our most this, our least that, and then they flip-flopped. And it's not one storm, it was many storms. It was not 1 month, it was many months. It was years. And even though our climate records are young, we have to go back to 1660 to see worse droughts. 1660 to see worse droughts. Even though our climate records are young, the trend is not our friend. The trend in everything we're seeing keeps going. We're seeing more, we're not necessarily seeing more snow, more rain, that type of thing. We're seeing more extreme events. So drier, dry, wetter, wet, warmer, warm, colder, cold. And if it was already hard to predict the weather, 3 months out, give me a break. If it was hard to predict the weather 3 days out, it's getting harder and harder because these storms that we do get, or the storms we don't get, are producing very unusual extreme conditions, making it harder, on vegetation, fire weather, harder on the economy, water. Imagine being a water supply or water manager in more difficult. Don't forget your cloud chart and don't forget your booklet. Do we have time for questions?
I have one.
Oh, you don't count. All right.
With all of your know-how
Yeah.
and all of your past history, what do you think we're looking at this winter?
You haven't been listening.
Was Mike paying attention at all? Is he really going to trust anything? I have no freaking idea. Pardon my French.
Good answer.
It's like we're making this stuff up. One event after another. 3 Category 4 hurricanes hitting the mainland. If you count Puerto Rico's mainland, which some people do, it's a territory. We have a National Weather Service office in Puerto Rico. They still don't have power. And we run on generators and all those backyards and ham radio and all that stuff, and we still don't have communication. So I don't know what it's going to bring us. It's going to rain, it's going to snow, but look for extremes. And look for more extremes. When you get that 10 inches of snow, good luck keeping it more than a week. Because it's probably going to be in the 60s. So these extreme swings are becoming more of a normalcy, and they're not difficult to predict within 5 or 6, 7 days, but 3 months out, 2 months out.
Now, I may think that I'm nuts, but I'd rather hear from him than Dallas Springs and Fritz and all the rest of them. So, for those, wait, just a second. We're way over time. For those that need to leave, feel free. But Alex, can you stay for a minute?
Yeah. I'm going to get a piece of cake.
Good. So, question. Absolutely.